All right, good morning, KOTA Territory. Welcome to your KOTA's Political Pulse. I'm Humberto Giles-Sanchez. I'm joined by investigative reporter Blake Troli here today. It's a fine Monday morning. It's a little bit weather-wise, it could be better. We could use a little bit more moisture, after what was said last week. But for now, we are joined by a special guest. Really quickly, could you introduce yourself, give us your title, your name, and kind of what you do here in the state of South Dakota?
Sure. Dan Ahlers, I'm a former state legislator, and I'm the executive director for the South Dakota Democratic Party.
All right, well, it's nice to meet you. So kind of starting off, Blake, take us away. Give us the questions.
Well, I think the best place to begin is as we are underway right now with President Trump's second term in office. Do you see the president as somebody who oversees the Democratic Party here in South Dakota? Do you see President Trump as somebody who might help the Democratic Party gain more seats in a state like South Dakota, or in fact galvanize more Republican voters to, dig in and continue to vote Republican?
I think based on what I'm hearing on the ground from independents and Republicans, if things continue down the current path, I do think there is some more opportunity. And I think it's important that we have balance in our government. I think it brings more stability. It brings better legislation, which ultimately means better services from our state and local government.
You guys have been hosting a series. There's about 4 or 5 of them, right? You're kind of midway through this town hall series that you're hosting throughout the state of South Dakota, correct?
Yeah, so it started as, we were getting a lot of calls from people wondering what they can do. They had concerns about what was happening with DOJ and a variety of things at both the state and federal level. We had advised them to contact their members of Congress, share their stories. We had folks that were losing their jobs, as a result of these DOJ cuts. So we said, tell your stories so that your members of Congress hear you. I said, they need to hear you. And they didn't feel like they were getting through. It became clear that we needed to have town halls. So it started with an invitation to all 3 members of Congress saying that, hey, we would like to host a town hall. Would you consider doing that? We got a form letter from Senator Thune's office. We had a nice email from Representative Johnson's office that said he wasn't available. I got a call through a third party to my personal cell phone from Rounds asking a little more detail about it. They were worried about it being partisan, and I'm like, all we want to do is create an opportunity for our members of Congress to engage with everyday South Dakotans. So if that's the one holdup, I'll turn it over to League of Women Voters. We'll give it to the Augie Dems and Augie Republicans and let them co-host an event at the university. Whatever you want to do. And they go, well, what do you get out of it? I said, you could say thank you. Really, it's really just trying to address the need of what people are asking for. And we're not seeing that from our members of Congress. They're holding very controlled, friendly meetings with small groups where they can get in and get out. They know it's a friendly environment, so they don't have to listen to folks air their concerns. And I've done a lot of these over the years, and of course not at the level of Congress, but these Cracker Barrels, these town halls, they're a great way to engage with people and hear what people are really concerned about. And I think as elected officials, we owe it to the people that we represent to listen to them.
I would imagine you've had some heated moments being a Democrat in South Dakota, hosting your own town halls, if you might want to share on a little bit of that.
You would think. But I can't remember a real bad experience. There are people that might disagree with you, but the exchanges have been healthy. Even as an avid door knocker when I campaigned, I'd knock thousands of doors each cycle. I can think of a handful of bad encounters. So I think, in South Dakota, things are just a little different. I'm not saying that things things haven't intensified, that there isn't a little more polarization than there was before. But I think at the heart of everything, people just want to be heard. And if you're willing to step up and do that, you find a friendly response. These town halls that we've been hosting, we haven't had any problems yet. And I hope I didn't jinx it by saying that, but really, I mean, it's been a great experience. And it's not just Democrats, they're independents, and being someone who's served in office, I know quite a few Republicans, and at these events that I've been to, I've seen them at that town hall too, asking questions.
And I had a really quick question because you know, you mentioned town halls and stuff like that, and we've recently heard comments from the South Dakota's lone representative, Dusty Johnson. So really quickly, he mentioned a little bit that town halls might not be the best way to communicate between the constituents and the representative. If that's not the best way, what is?
Well, it's not the best if you know what you're doing isn't in the best interest of South Dakotans. When you're avoiding people, that means you know deep down that what you're doing and the actions you're taking in Washington aren't in line with the people you represent. The best way to get out there and have an exchange is direct contact. Now, when you have a town hall, you can get a large number of people. We had 400 at Augustana. We had to turn, 60 to 80 people away. So you're thinking nearly 500 people showed up on a Tuesday night to hear from people that weren't elected to Congress, but have served at the federal level or served in nonprofits and have been impacted by these federal cuts, to share resources and listen to concerns. And that they're not elected. So imagine if our elected officials took the time to show up, what might happen? And I think it's a cop-out when they say that that's not the best way, because that person-to-person exchange has always been the best way to represent people.
Right, exactly. And
do you think that President Trump's term right now puts Congress members, Senate members kind of in a tough position between them and their constituents, specifically when we talk about tariffs? If you represent an ag state, the Trump administration is negotiating trade, and you're in Congress, if you're representing one of these ag states, you're kind of caught in the middle between, I've got my constituents that are, many in the ag sector that may be impacted by these tariffs, but we got the president who has his vision right now on not only revamping trade deals, but also bringing back U.S. manufacturing. There's a lot of, obviously, elements to this, and you kind of have two separate agendas here.
Well, I think you make some good points, and it can put you in a bind, especially when you're not in line with your party leader. I think that there are a couple of things that they should be doing. One, they shouldn't be afraid to be advising the president and saying, we don't think this is the right path. And there are enough of them out there that disagree, but that are not saying anything, that if they win as a united front, I think that it could be impactful. But when it comes down to it, you don't represent the president, you don't represent his agenda, you represent the people of your state. And you have to be, you have to do what's best for the people that you represent. When it comes down to it, if you're more concerned about what the president might do and what the president might think, then you're just worried about getting reelected. And does that mean you might not get reelected? It's possible. I mean, I served a very conservative district, and I couldn't ever worry about that. I had to work and do the things that the people in my district expected me to do and not think about getting reelected. And maybe that's why I didn't get reelected in 2010. Maybe that's why I didn't get reelected when I came back and served a couple of years and I ran again in 2018. But I can sleep at night. The folks in my community, the folks that I interact with, I still have a good relationship with. And sometimes you get caught up in that political turmoil. That's nothing that you can control. It could be, for me in 2010, it was President Obama. For me in 2018, when you serve in a district where you got to get 2,500 Republicans, sometimes it's just what's going on at the federal level at that time. You get caught up with it. It's not personal. But those can't be part of your calculus if you're really doing your job.
Well, I was going to say about kind of something that I wanted to ask was, you asked Levi last week, with such a minority being Democratic here in South Dakota at the state legislature, what I mean, how does that look like? Are there different types of Democratic people here? You know, especially nowadays. You know, something that Levi pointed out last week was that there are two types of conservatives. There are the Republicans, and then there are the conservatives. So is that kind of the similar thing here, where there are a little bit more left-leaning people, and then there are the middle, like kind of more classical Democrats?
Maybe progressives versus a classic Democrat.
Yeah. In South Dakota and other rural states, I think you'll find a lot of commonality. It's common sense, focused on jobs, focused on individual rights, focused on education and healthcare, just the things that affect everyday lives. That's what I was focused on when I was in the legislature. If you look at the 9 Democrats we had in the state legislature this year, that's what they worked on. They worked on healthcare. They worked on services for the homeless in order to help them better access the job market. And they worked on rural health care issues. They worked on education, the fight for that funding for the state library. You know, all of those things, they worked so hard to avoid the cuts that were proposed by Governor Noem, and then the rug gets pulled out from them here just a couple weeks ago with the federal funding, and now the state library is closed. But those are the types of things that you'll see Democrats working on in rural states and in South Dakota. I mean, you just have to look at their record. You're not seeing these gun bills, you know, these radical gun bills that are trying to take guns away. You don't, all the things that you hear about Democrats at the national level, or just that stereotype, you're not going to find here in South Dakota.
Do you think the National Democratic Party could learn a lot by tapping into the Democratic parties of states like South Dakota?
I think so, and I think you see that with the election of our new DNC chair, Ken Martin from Minnesota. I mean, he was elected overwhelmingly as the new DNC chair with a message that's probably more moderate. I know that it's angered some more progressives, particularly young people. But I mean, think about when we were younger, we were a little more headstrong, and we wanted everything, and we wanted it now. And you learn along the way that if you want to make lasting change, you have to build coalitions. You have to figure out ways to work together. Otherwise, we get what we're seeing at the national level, where you're ruling by executive orders, and one comes in with a bunch of executive orders, the next president comes in and undoes them with a bunch of executive orders, and you don't have that consistency, and it creates a lot of chaos. It creates chaos in the economy. It creates this uncertainty of what people's futures are, and that anxiety and angst that many young people are feeling is a direct result of that. So I think all in all, there are a handful of people that are, you know, that get out there and they play the populist. You know, Bernie Sanders does that quite a bit. I think that type of populism on either side can be very dangerous if it's not checked with reality. And you just don't find that here in South Dakota. People want many of the same things. They just choose a different path to get there.
As a Democrat who was successful in South Dakota, you were successful in the legislature. When you look at trying to find that next presidential candidate for the Democratic Party, what do you think they need to be looking for? Because the key, obviously, for their victory is to win these mid-American states.
I think, first and foremost, authenticity. We see this with candidates on both sides that try to pander to bases or wherever they think the winds might be blowing. People can see through that. And if you're not genuine, it doesn't matter what your position is. If they don't feel like they can trust you, that you have their back, they're not going to vote for you. So it's just as much about being your authentic self as it is about your policies. The difference between Republicans and Democrats is really pretty minute. 80% of the time you're going to find that folks from either side of the aisle agree on the end goal. The difference comes in the path in which we get there and achieve it. And that's where the great discussions, the great compromises come into place. George McGovern and Bob Dole, two titans of their time, created the World Food Program. You had Tip O'Neill and Ronald Reagan in the 80s doing their thing. Tom Daschle and Newt Gingrich or I'm spacing the other guy's name, but they worked together to solve these problems together. And in the end, was everybody happy? Each side got a little bit of what they wanted, and the needle moved forward. And that's how we make those systemic changes. And that's not happening right now. And we won't see anything meaningful until we can get back to that type of political decorum and work ethic.
And from your time in the legislature here in the state, how do those discussions, I mean, at least from your experience, how did those discussions come up and how were they worked on here?
Well, you have to build trust. I mean, you have some that are automatically suspect of you because you're a Democrat. And the same goes the other way too, right? I spent my time having discussions with some Republicans that their own party didn't want to have with them, especially when it came to the budget and what things meant and how things were being spent and why they were being spent that way. You build trust. They may not agree with you, but you build trust. And I think that's where it starts. Sometimes it's easy to collaborate if you're doing your homework and you find people that want to work together on something. I remember Feeding South Dakota had invited a bunch of appropriators to their facility in Sioux Falls to talk about a TANF increase. And this was such a small increase. It was $2 a month is all they were, this whole thing was about. And you wouldn't think that that would be a difficult fight, but it became an incredibly big battle with the governor opposed to it. So I was asked, who some of the Republicans were that I thought we should invite that were, maybe outside the ones that you traditionally knew would support. And I mentioned a Sioux Falls legislator at that time, and they said, "Really?" I'm like, "Give him a chance. Invite him, and let's see what happens. It can't hurt." So I'm not naming this person because I don't want to throw him under the bus, because some people would probably give him a lot of flack. But we walked through Feeding South Dakota together, and after he saw the need, this is a big fiscal conservative. I can't stress how much this guy doesn't want to spend a dime. And he looks at me and goes, "How do we get this done? How do we get this done?" So we started working on it, and at the very last minute, a Sioux Falls, or a Rapid City senator, who shall remain unnamed, pulled the rug out from under us and killed it in our appropriations process in the final days. This fiscal conservative who has never seen something he doesn't want to cut is so furious. He goes, "We got to figure out a way to get this done." If you have those conversations with people, and you you can have all these differences, but if you can have that sit down, honest conversation, you can show the merit of it. I think anyone can change their mind or work towards common goals, and that's how you do that. We came back the next year and we got it through. We got really creative and we tied it to some to other inflationary increases, so that if they stripped one, they stripped it all, and then they didn't realize it till after they voted for it, and then we laughed at them. So a little strategy, but we got it done, and it was a good thing though. And you build those relationships.
What do you make of the current legislature, this last session, 100th session? And what did you make of the legislative body that was present for this session? And how many seats did you guys have? We
had 9.
9, okay.
But that 9 became very important because of the fracturing in the Republican Party. And it turned out better than many of us thought it would, because we were able to stop some really bad legislation from getting through. And school vouchers, which I know people think that they should have the freedom to choose where they go to school. Absolutely, you do. You have a choice. But that means, that doesn't mean at the expense of public education, because the South Dakota Constitution mandates that we provide a free and appropriate public education. And if you're not funding education and you're taking money away from public education, a public education system that is already one of the poorest in the country when it comes to reimbursements and teacher pay and all those things, the legislature made the right decision.
If I understand, and I just want to clarify this because this was explained to me before, during the session, that basically what you're explaining is that the Republican Party, there's kind of a couple different factions of it, and they would side differently on different issues, and that the Democrats would usually find themselves on one or the other side of these bills, and it would swing from my understanding of this depending on what the substance was, but that you guys in some cases really were the make or break of some of these bills.
Yep, and that's because the legislators we have are very good. They care, they engage. They hosted an online town hall themselves just to kind of do a session wrap up and allow people to ask questions and get a feel for it. They're very engaged that way, and these people are folks that work in education, they work in healthcare, they work for nonprofits, so they're really tuned in to the needs of their community, and they just want to do good work. Now imagine for a second that we had another dozen of these individuals in the legislature. You might be able to prevent some of the bad legislation from even happening in the first place or ever getting to the floor. When there were 24 Democrats in the House, and I think we had 12 or 14 Democrats in the Senate, these bills never made it out of committee. Some of these goofy bills that really, the bathroom bills and some of the silliness that comes up that becomes a distraction to the entire session, those bills never made it out of committee. And that was Democrats and Republicans, once again, working together. So if we can take the extremism on either side and tamp it down and just focus on real issues, things that really mean something to South Dakota, imagine what kind of state government we would have.
And really quickly, before you ask your question, if we can kind of wrap it up here, we got two more questions here, real quick.
Well, I'll let you finish. I mean, I've been just like peppering the questions this whole show. So.
Well, no, I've just been curious a lot. You know, you're a lot of this time. You know, your experience in the legislature. What do you hope, at least moving forward, with the South Dakota legislature? What do you hope happens? You know, what do you hope to see from them?
I would like to see a focus back to our healthcare needs. We were making some really good progress when I left the legislature in 2018. We had goals. We said, what do we want the world to look like? What do we want South Dakota to look like, irregardless of the costs? And you have to do that. We were thinking and planning ahead, and we had strategy. We did the same with education. We looked at how to improve our services and find efficiencies. We had a lead committee which was focused on efficiencies that was part of as a legislative subcommittee that I was part of, that looked for these efficiencies, that went into state government, did all of these things that people say they want, but we did it in a meaningful and constructive and thoughtful manner. And I really want to see us get back to that, where we're looking forward and saying, what do we want South Dakota to look like in 20 years? What is it going to cost? And then how do we get there? Because you're setting priorities, right? Right now it just feels like we're throwing things out there. There are little groups that, you know, don't like public education, so they attack it. They don't like the ballot initiative process, so they're attacking our personal freedoms and our voter rights. That's not what South Dakota is about. It's amazing to see the Republican Party, who claims to be the party of the people and personal freedoms, attacking the voting process that we led. For once, we actually led the country in this. We were the first for this ballot initiative and constitutional amendment process, this option for the people to have an opportunity to have a say at the ballot box. We led it, and that's direct democracy. It is a way for our voters, if they don't agree with the legislature, to take issue with it and have their say. And to see the Republican Party attacking that the party that claims to be for the people and about the people, is just insane. And I know that there are many of them over there that don't believe in attacking that, but go along with it because they're afraid of what happens if they don't. And you saw that with the pipeline. And I think the pipelines sent a bad message because really it was low voter turnout, but it was about people who were motivated about an issue that was important to them. And Now they've used that as a gauge. Well, if I don't follow along, they're going to primary me and they're going to run me out. Well, go do your job, knock your doors, get your folks out to vote, and make sure that people are engaged, and maybe that wouldn't happen.
I think it's a perfect place to end it.
All right. Well,
looking forward.
Skip that last question.
Yeah.
Looking
well,
forward.
Dan, really, thank you so much for your time today. We do appreciate you coming in.
100%. It was really nice to talk to you. It was a good conversation. Blake, again, thank you for joining us here. KOTA's
Kind of my job, but you know, you're welcome. You're welcome for me doing my job.
For now, we hope you watching right now have a wonderful Monday and a wonderful rest of your work week. Be sure to tune back in here next week again. We'll be having another guest on, but for now, we'll see you.